the nature of the music industry is quite, and in the creative industries, it's quite unhealthy. It's late hours, it's late nights. There aren't many boundaries. You're supposed to kind of work 24 hours. When you're on tour, you can't control what you're eating. Your body has to sleep when it can sleep. And for some reason in the arts, the job comes with some more acceptable torture.
And it's wild that there are no safeguarding barriers in place at all, especially when a lot of artists are cherry-picked from such a young age and go through the machine. And now we're seeing this landslide of like horrific things coming out.
Liam Payne has just massively exposed a lot.
Lee McQueen.
And Amy Winehouse.
The buzz, the adrenaline of being on stage, and then to come off that with your ears ringing in an empty hotel room. You're just living in dysfunction and no one teaches you.
They don't know how to regulate. They don't know how to come off the stage, come off the high, come back to the hotel, come back home and adapt to a normal life because it's so enlarged, it's so heightened. That's when you've got somewhere. So we're talking about fame there, and we're talking about artists who are on the road. Then you've got artists who really want to be there. So actually that's at best where you're going to end up, is with a very stressed out nervous system, exhausted and glamorized by everyone around you because you're doing the thing everyone wants.
Hello everyone and welcome to a bright sunny morning at Eastern Honey's HQ. It is another episode in season 2 and today we are joined by the wonderful Denise Devenish. Thank you. Denise, love having you here. Thank you for coming. And we're going to kick off with a professional bio so you can just enjoy while we sing your praises.
Oh, wonderful.
It's been such a pleasure already having you in this space, sharing your energy and just like having really lovely and authentic conversations off camera. So
Thank you.
We're loving it already. So, of your bio, Denise Devenish is a trailblazing Japanese-British counsellor and mental health advocate, specialising in supporting musicians and creative professionals. Growing up in a family steeped in the music industry, Denise's unique background allows her to bridge the worlds of creativity and mental well-being. As a qualified person-centered counsellor and a registered member of the BACP, she runs a private practice addressing the unique challenges faced by those in the music and creative industries. Denise's work extends beyond individual therapy as she collaborates with major record labels, charities like Help Musicians UK, and initiatives such as Music Minds Matter. As of 2025, Denise continues to be a leading voice in promoting mental wellness in the arts, solidifying her position as a crucial figure in the intersection of creativity and mental health. With her knowledge and expertise, we will discuss mental health in media, creative burnout, and why Asians don't go to therapy. That's a lie. And the beauty of self-expression. Denise Devenish, welcome to Eastern Honey.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
So in your own words, can you tell us about your background, your heritage, and how you identify?
My dad is English. He is a white man from an estate in High Wycombe who fell in love with black music. And my mum is Japanese, and she interviewed him in the early 80s while he was coming up. She ran a magazine. And they had me a few years later. But she's from a tiny village called Nanjo in a prefecture called Fukui in Japan, and she left when she was 19 and never went back. So she's now British. She gave up as well her Japanese passport and is officially British. So I grew up surrounded by musicians, West Indian, Jamaican, musicians actually from everywhere, musicians from everywhere. My house was a studio and a record label. So it was a very diverse upbringing. My house was literally full of people from all around the world every day, and music filled my house. I watched artists basically, creating and collaborating, and they became family. So yeah, my whole upbringing's been very, very diverse. But I ended up growing up in quite a white, affluent, middle-class area. And I think, as we were saying earlier, I always felt a bit different. and odd. And, I remember being picked up by my dad's friends who looked very different to most of the parents. Sometimes a rasta would come and get me with my dad, who was uncle whoever. And for me, it was normal. And suddenly I realized people were looking and staring. And then as a mother, I see a child becomes aware of the world through other people's eyes at some point, which is quite a sad shift. And I remember that in me. And I remember feeling different, but I don't think I really understood how much was connected to my own mixed heritage, beyond how diverse my whole life was. And it's massively why I've gone on to do what I do.
So we know that you're an artist yourself, a musician, a singer, songwriter.
Kind of, yeah.
That you have beautiful pipes. We were listening like, wow. Yeah. So tell us about your music journey and then also what led you to transition more into counselling.
My dad's a dub reggae producer, and he was very much saying I should sing reggae. So again, it's quite interesting, the identity of the artist and what belongs to you and what somebody else is encouraging you to do. When you grow up in a family surrounded by very talented musicians, there's actually quite a lot of pressure as well. And it was difficult to get in touch with my own voice. But I started singing on sound systems, which is quite, and I toured with Blur and, I had some amazing experiences. But in the music industry, there's a lot of drink and drugs, more so then. And there was a lot of pressure. It's a lot of intense energy. And I got caught up in that a bit very young. I struggled with my mental health. That's where it began. I'm talking 16, 17. I was very young. And I walked away from performing and trying to perform and did my degree. I started working with young people as a way of healing the young person in me. I think all therapists are wounded healers. And I worked with young people for 10 years in people referral units. I worked in a suicide unit. I worked to offer young people what I don't think we have, is enough emotional and well-being education. Yeah. And the Asian part, my mum was really unable to talk about my struggles. She was there in the way she is. And this I've come to realize more and more, she loves me in ways nobody does. But she couldn't cuddle me or talk to me about the anxiety I was feeling, or it was too much. It was so foreign to her to know how to speak about it. So I went on a journey to learn how to speak about it in such a way that I could offer it to young people and save them and save that part of me. That's the honest truth.
God, I really resonate with that as well. And I think when Asian parents can't provide that emotional foundation to their children, like I really learned to be at peace with that, because I'm like, they were doing the best with the tools that they've been given, and that is enough. But it was definitely for me such a journey, and I have a similar journey to you. Sought that in other places and other people, and then in turn found myself.
Right.
Through a lot of self-work.
Yeah.
And actually in an Instagram post that I saw on your profile, you speak about glamorizing the idea of the tortured artist. What do you mean by this? And what does it mean to have a regulated nervous system? Because I don't know, girl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring it out. We all are, there's not absolute answers to this stuff. But along the journey, I lost some of those people that I really loved. And, as a, I didn't really know when I was a kid why they had died, but it was substance. It was drug abuse, but also just, I'm thinking of a few at once, but the nature of the music industry is quite, and in the creative industries, it's quite unhealthy. It's late hours, it's late nights. There aren't many boundaries. You're supposed to kind of work 24 hours. When you're on tour, you can't control what you're eating. Your body has to sleep when it can sleep and is adapting to time shifts. And I think I lost people to lots of aspects that come with choosing to be an artist in an industry that isn't necessarily that supportive or safe always. So what I mean by beware to not glamorize, the idea of somebody being a drug addict has been glamorized and glorified a lot. And young people have aspired to take drugs because it's been publicized that it's cool. That's the torture. I'm so out of it, I'm so high and so. And Amy Winehouse, we watched her in front of us. I say it's quite interesting idea of the audience's role in the arts. I think we collectively all felt guilty when Amy Winehouse died, and when we were watching her sort of literally wasting away. There are lots of important questions as to who, in terms of the team. I'm not blaming anybody. I think it's very complex, but the way in which we allow artists to carry on while they're destroying themselves, we really need to address this. It's not glamorous in any way. And that's what I mean by that. There's nothing glamorous about someone being tortured in any job by their own brains, by their own hearts. Yeah. And for some reason in the arts, the job comes with some more acceptable torture.
And it's wild that there are no safeguarding barriers in place at all, especially when a lot of artists are cherry-picked from such a young age and go through the machine. And now we're seeing this landslide of horrific things coming out from all.
Liam Payne has just massively exposed a lot about being a young boy in those hotel rooms by himself. And
I suppose it's the buzz, the adrenaline of being on stage, and then to come off that with your ears ringing in an empty hotel room with of course you're going to...
system question.
You're just living in dysfunction.
And no one teaches you.
They don't know how to regulate. They don't know how to come off the stage, come off the high, come back to the hotel, come back home and adapt to a normal life because it's so enlarged, it's so heightened. Anyone striving to get, that's when you've got somewhere. So we're talking about fame there, and we're talking about artists who are on the road. Then you've got artists who really want to be there. So actually that's at best where you're going to end up, is with a very stressed out nervous system, exhausted and glamorized by everyone around you because you're doing the thing everyone wants.
Oh my God. I have so much to talk about this because I watched this 3-part, I think it's on BBC, the series called Boy Bands Forever.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Everyone keeps saying I've been a bit sleepy with the kids, but I want to watch it.
I really recommend it.
Okay, yeah, I heard it's great.
Because Robbie Williams speaks quite candidly about performing to thousands of people, every day since he was 15. And then they were showing clips of Take That's music videos, and they were so hypersexualized at such a young age.
Same with Justin Bieber.
In the Korean boy, but there's been the suicides and lots of I haven't seen it, but there's the thing of bringing young people in as well, and the sexualization and no preparation. How can you sign a young person to a large record deal, chuck them into doing loads of gigs, put them on tour, have them be dressed in a way that they've got no choice over? Really, that's still going on.
Surrounded by a team of adults.
Surrounded by, where's the mental health? Where is the mental health support?
Yeah. So Chappell Roan,
yes, yeah,
at the 2025 Grammys said,
amazing, yeah,
she's incredible.
Yes.
So, quote, "I told myself if I ever won a Grammy, I would demand that labels and the industry profiting millions of dollars off of artists would offer a livable wage and healthcare, especially to developing artists." What are your thoughts on mental health issues in the music scene? I know you've touched upon it already.
Well, it's rife. The biggest research study in the world was done by a woman called Sally Ann Gross and a man called George Musgroves. I was involved in the second part, supporting, because they were being asked to explain about their careers and the parts that were challenging. And so stuff came up, I was there to support. And it did, because they spoke to thousands of musicians, 2 rounds, across genres at different stages in their career. Over 85% are struggling with incidences of anxiety and depression. The creative industries are rife with mental health issues. This is a serious, we have a problem, a huge problem. And Chappell Roan, you're asking the industry to safeguard. Yeah. You're asking the industry to pay. There's so many musicians who are struggling to stay in the game. And these are musicians who've had success. Kate Nash had a #1 hit. I've worked with musicians who've had #1 hits, who've had loads of success. And from the success, they're struggling. Because also what happens is you're launched into seeking external validation. So your sense of self it's a weird thing to go out and be famous. It's a weird thing to step on a stage and say, like me, applaud me, adore me.
Yeah.
And then to try and sustain any kind of normal life whilst doing that again on the weekends, doing it on a Wednesday, doing it on a Monday. You're flipping in between a very bizarre sense of measuring yourself.
Yeah.
And we were talking about identity and about being mixed or about being, Asian, raised here. It's similar. There's lots of, for artists, there's this need to belong to their art, but then their art's in the hands of other people's opinions constantly. So, and there's not enough pay. The amount of musicians, even who have had number one hits, who are struggling financially, massively.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Even since TLC, Left Eye,
Oh,
got on stage and said, we're broke. And actually helped her Grammy.
R.I.P. Yeah, Left Eye. Oh my God, that's an amazing documentary. The last days of oh my gosh, yeah.
In terms of the mental health challenges that artists face generally, how does that become even more profound when someone is of color? And how imperative is it to have therapy?
I mean, I just think for human beings, the world of psychotherapy, if we take away from the music industry, it's predominantly white middle class, full stop. So any person of color looking for a therapist, as we were saying earlier on, struggles. It's really hard to find them. I think any person of color looking for therapy is going to struggle because the world of psychotherapy, psychology, psychiatry, counselling is predominantly white middle class. So we need more therapists of color. And in the music industry, it's so diverse. So if you're a woman of color in the music industry, it can be a dangerous place. It's a boys' club, for one, and it's a lot of the music executives are white boys. Sorry to say, there's no other way of saying it. And so to you got it,
Chris, James.
So of course it's important to have therapeutic support, and therapeutic support coming from people like me, or people who sit in the lived experience of being othered, of being mixed. Because immediately when you sit in front of a therapist that is of color, you will probably relax and before you've even begun the process of therapy, feel you can start. When you're sitting in front of a white psychotherapist who has not done the work, who is not culturally competent, it can be dangerous, it can be detrimental, and it can be a massive hindrance to somebody's mental health and well-being. In fact, I'd say it'd probably be better to not go into therapy.
No way.
Yes. Unless the therapist is culturally competent. There is always difference in the space. There is always diversity in the space. So cultural competence is capacity, is the training the therapist should have, or anybody should have. I'll speak about it in the therapist space because you need to have cultural competence in all workspaces. But in the therapy space, for me, my cultural competence is based on my capacity to sit with my own prejudice, my own bias, my own racism, to understand my experience of difference, my experience of being mixed, to have been brave enough to have named the pain in that, the embarrassment in that, the confusion in that. So that when somebody is sitting in front of me, I don't block them. Because if somebody comes to talk to me about their experience, there was always going to be diversity in it. If I have not been able to sit in my own, I will block them. Why are they paying to see me? If they're coming and they're vulnerable and they're saying, I need to be seen, I need to explore, and I'm the person that they're reaching for to help them, and I haven't done the work, I am not culturally competent, then the ethics of the whole workforce needs to be challenged. And in the music industry, diversity is everywhere. And when people are creating and talking about their experience, which is what music and the arts is about. It's about communication, it's about expression, it's about freedom, that's very vulnerable. So there's lots of crossover for me in the therapy space and the music industry space in terms of the artist and the person in therapy. They are by default vulnerable. So the industry must hold them and therapists must hold them. And cultural competence is imperative in all parts.
just picking up on confronting your own mixedness and heritage and background and interrogating that. You shared off camera an anecdote about an exercise you went through, and it would be so good if you could just share that, because...
Yeah, no, it's important. It's really important stuff. It really was in my life. You don't often know that the training of the therapist, beyond cultural competence, is going to really shape your experience in therapy. So I'm not going to go off on one, but simply there is the Freudian psychodynamic approach. There is the humanistic approach where I very much sit, and there is the solution-focused approach. And when I was looking for a course, I searched for a course that would teach me how to work in a humanistic way, but that also I was looking for where the diversity training was. And the course I chose was one of the only ones that did a specialist module in working with diversity and cultural competence. Of course, I went with that. Got onto the course. And anyway, I would tell you, they said, we're going to be doing the module on diversity in the next couple of weeks. That's all they said.
Frantically Googling.
We knew a bit. We read about the module, but we didn't know when it would start. And so I came in and I had my coffee, and everyone was just quite spaced out in the morning because it was a very intense place. There was no windows. Sometimes I think they did it deliberately. So you sort of had to kind of confront the inner chaos of your own mind. Anyway, so I walked in, and my tutor, who's a very bold, very powerful human being, just went, okay, good morning, everyone. All the black people over there, all the white people over there, and everyone else in the middle. Maybe she said mixed. And I went, all right. And then there was this, and that's why every time I tell it, I can feel it. And that feeling in my chest just carried on for the next, we did this for 2 months. And there was a really awkward moment where two of my friends who are mixed black and white from very different backgrounds didn't know where to go. They didn't know if they should go in the black group or the mixed group. And they were sort of pivoting and stuck. And then what was very painful, which is what began, which is very important, is that I observed two of my black friends who aren't mixed looking as if to say, why are you coming into this group? Because you're this is what came out later, so I'm adding language to what I saw. You're not black. You also have white heritage. So what we then went through very painfully for the next couple of months was these kind of forced exercises where we had to expose those uncomfortable prejudice, bias, things that we don't want to say out loud. And the mixed group, I was saying, were really quiet. And one day my tutor just said, Denise, you always got something to say. You've got a loud mouth. What's happened to you? And I remember saying, I remember saying it out loud, and it was so significant for me in my journey of understanding my mixed experience. I said, I feel choked. I literally don't. I'm watching the white and the black group fighting. I've got people in my group from Egypt, India, the mixed black and white students who sort of landed there in the end. Some stayed in the group. And I think we were all really stuck in knowing how we could contribute. And we were such a mix. It just felt like we were this kind of messy group that were put together, and we were irritated that we were together because it wasn't honoring. I was like, I'm Japanese and English, and you're Turkish, and you're Chinese, and you're Bangladeshi, and where is our honoring? Why have we all just been piled in together? But then we had to listen to the black and the white group literally fight in front of us, and often the white group painfully defensive, shaking almost and looking pale. And we all saw each other in a way that we'd, that will always live with me. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done is my training. Because, and that's why I'm a good therapist. And I know that because I'm willing to sit in the fire of my own experience, even if it's wrong. And yeah, that was what happened.
Given the Asian expectation of privacy and tradition, how was pursuing a career in counselling received by your Japanese mother and also your white father?
This stuff it's hard because, like I said, my mum, I had a breakdown, basically. It was very serious when I was 18. So my mum, like you said, it was very painful going through that with her, in needing her close, but really literally her not knowing how to be. But I think I taught her quite a lot about, being open about what's happening, because I think in response to that, her Japanese way of being quite removed, I became very open. I was actually quite a shy child, believe it or not. But I came deliberately, I think, through my own dance with my mental health, so desperate to be honest, and
seen.
Yes, and nothing to be pretended, and politely in the Japanese way, sort of, which I respect. I don't mean to undermine, but I just thought, I'm just going to be loud and open and clear and cry and scream and shout. That was very much in the 20s. And then with her, and in my 30s when I did my counselling training, she was proud, she was immensely proud. She was immensely proud because she saw the work I was doing. She saw that I was working with young people, in the suicide unit. It was very heavy. I was working with young people with severe disabilities. I'd come home and she'd say, I'm proud of you. And it's rare for her to say that. I mean, I can remember on how many times she's cuddled me. We don't cuddle. She said she was proud of me during that time. So it was the one, she's written cards. As we've gotten older, she's more sentimental. It's very moving because she mainly just cusses me.
Out in love.
Yeah, but she's very, very strict. But anyway, so I was teaching to the Japanese. I was sensei at the time. We went to Japan, just my mum and I. We were sitting, no, actually my husband, who wasn't my husband then, was there, and my brother. So it was very awkward, this meal. We were having an Italian-Japanese, and we were having this wine. I remember it very clearly. And there's this moment where we're translating what's Den-chan doing and how is Den-chan doing, because I can't speak Japanese. So I'm going into the translation space. And I said to my mum, well, you can say I'm almost qualified, And so she starts to translate it. And I'm not expecting anything other than well done. And there was complete silence and actually absolute avoidance. And they carried on. So there was this very weird moment where my husband was waiting, the English, the three, my brother, me and my white husband and my brother all lost completely just. And then my mum carried on too. And I sat there and I said to my husband, what just happened? And he said, I don't know. And I had this feeling, and you receive a feeling of, it's so big, you're trying to kind of catch up with it. And it was kind of the rejection, the sort of confusion. Shame, anger.
Yeah, sadness.
Sadness, right. So we got home, and then what exasperated, the Japanese, the boy thing in Japan is a thing, definitely. The way that my mum is with my brother is quite different to me. I got my degrees, 9 years, but I'm 7 years older than him. So I got my degree many years before him. And we got to the house because we'd only just realised that my picture of me holding the scroll that had been taken down and replaced. And my brother's was there.
Oh my God.
This is on top of the dinner, right? So at this point, I just burst into tears because I'd had some wine. And I went away and I went in the back room and I just said, how could I have been sitting there and tell everybody what I've done and what I'm doing, and them to say nothing?
Yeah, that's, the silence is deafening.
And then I tried to raise it with my mum, and I think she just said, look, they just don't get it. We don't talk about anxiety and depression. We don't talk about mental health. I don't remember anyone going to a counsellor. You just deal with it. You don't complain, you don't moan, you don't cry in front of people.
Able to be silent and take yourself off to the woods.
Oh God, right, there's the heavy one, with the Japanese sort of the honour of...
I know this is obviously such a painful, lived experience. What lightness did you take from it? What lessons have you learned from it?
That I don't need to wait for them to accept anything I'm doing. And I mean, ultimately, that's the lesson with all of this. I don't need anyone to... People always speak to me about Japan. I used to pretend I knew more than I just I don't know much about Japan.
And claim it.
Yeah, I don't like manga. No. I like some Sailor Moon. I don't. People start waffling to me about stuff, assuming that I know it, and I just now say, no, I don't. I claim exactly who I am. I love my mum so much. We're so different. I don't understand many of her ways. I think she could do things in ways that are a lot kinder, more considerate sometimes, but she does things in ways I never could. And her consistency in my life and her discipline and her commitment to me has been done in ways where she never asked for any acknowledgement or praise, but she always did it.
Yeah.
My dad perhaps would want a little bit more acknowledgement, or he's more cuddly and loving and kind, but everyone just presents differently, and I'm accepting of that. And mental health and well-being is my thing. And, I saved myself through my own struggles. I didn't personally go the route of medication. I had a white therapist. It was disastrous. I remember that being the tipping point where it got really bad. That's why I say what I say. Then years later, found a woman that's mixed. She's massively the reason why I chose to become a counsellor.
Incredible. In terms of going back to your own experiences when you were 16, 17, performing in that world, did you experience racism or anything?
Yes.
What was that like?
We on the Blur tour, actually, me and my dad and our friend Squid, who is a Rasta, we were in Wolverhampton, and a very white crowd, and we were singing live, and we were kind of improvising over a dub rhythm. And somebody said, I don't even want to say what they said, but someone shouted out, "Get off the stage, you black cunt." And I was so shocked that I stopped singing. I just had I had an immediate reaction. I wasn't trained in how to perform. I just froze. And I did then hear the same person say something along the lines of, "Seeing you horrible again, chinky something." The most ridiculous, stupid, now you just can't even believe that happened. And I ran off the stage crying.
Of course.
And then Squid got really cross. The whole thing was awful. And my dad, being versed in this kind of stuff as a white man in a very black world and having faced a lot of judgment, I think, or kind of having success too as a white man making black music.
Very layered.
Yeah. He stayed and did the show. And I remember being by the side, he did the whole thing. And lots of people booed. I was so awkward for him. I remember watching, just being like, "Get off the stage, Daddy, please get off the stage." And he stayed to the end. And he came off and he was completely fine. And I said, he was like, "It's all right, my love. It's okay." He's very good at allowing me to just talk it through. I said, "How did you stay?" He said, "Well, you've got to finish the show." He said he's been been on shows where all kinds of stuff's happened. But that was my experience. It's interesting because in that world, people would always say, "You're so black to me." And I'd always take that as a compliment, because I think it meant they were like, "You're not like the white people, Have you got black in you?" I've always said that to me. "Have you got black in you?" And I'd be like, "No," but I'd be really happy that they'd ask that. And if I look back at that time, I didn't feel comfortable around the white girls in my school. I definitely looked for people of colour.
And that was your safe with?
To be safe with, yeah.
Would you feel comfortable maybe sharing or speaking about your father's experiences, about having success in from black music, and what that must have been like growing up
And navigating mixed children at a time back then?
I can't really speak for him because he's got his own voice on his experience. I can speak for us being in the house. It was such a colourful house. It was so beautiful. When they split up, it was so sad because that stopped, and then it was me and my mum. But I think that his experience in music is very interesting because he wanted to bring in the kind of punk elements into dub and reggae. So his whole work's been around merging worlds, and I think he too is actually very strong in who he is, and not getting and if people need to name the whiteness, he'll talk about it. I think he's very good like that. So yeah, I'm really grateful for my family, and that's why I really do what I do, because artists have this brilliant capacity to be honest in a way that, when it's done boldly, is so powerful. It moved me more than anything. You know, I saw Nina Simone speaking the other day, again, a person that haunts me because she was so mentally unwell. And the documentary about her is the heaviest thing I've ever seen. But, you know, Nina Simone wanted to be a classical pianist, and because she's Black, they forced her to be a jazz singer. So that was her first tragedy and splitting of self. And then she spoke later about the artist's role as being, you know, the artist needs to be honest and be somebody who's willing to talk about the times and to reflect the times and to change the times, because she was also a political activist. And, you know, when you've got artists that are going up and willing to make a difference with their heart, I would just think it's so important that we cherish that, you know, and that we value that. Because in my mixed experience, it was the arts that saw me and the arts that saved me. And through my own demise, being able to create, sing, to go to shows and be around artists who are willing to have open conversations, immersed in colour, is where I want to be.
So as a qualified person-centered counsellor, can you give us some like self-care tips that you would recommend to creatives and artists to help deal with like anxiety, financial stress, confidence struggles, things that are accessible to, you know, a wide range of people?
I think that the act of being creative is so important. Like, we have to, away from the business of selling your creativity, keep creating. And I actually mean that for all people, whether you're in the business as a creative person, create, draw. I just think every human has an artist within them. And like Picasso said, you know, it's keeping the artist for life that's problematic. So I think the artist self is, in my mind, the self that is willing to think from an authentic sense. You know, I think we all have to have a relationship with ourselves that is close. And I think when we're creative, we can speak to ourselves in a way that's quite fluid and free. And sometimes it's surprising. And it's away from the external structures of being human. It's internal. And in humanistic psychotherapy, everything's about developing the internal locus of evaluation versus the external locus. So I think art and I think therapy is about that. I think it's about, not in an indulgent way. People are always like, you know, I don't have the money for therapy, or it's so indulgent to talk about my problems. Okay, that's one part. But the shaman, for the longest time, there has always been a person in tribes, in all cultures, that hold space for people. So we must hold space for ourselves. And you can go and get therapy from training institutions for nothing, or £5, by the way. I always shout that out. In the last year of training, you have to accumulate hundreds of hours until you can qualify. So I saw the public for £5 or free sometimes. So everyone can afford therapy in this country. We can find ways to access therapy. But beyond that, I totally endorse meditation, somatic practices, any way that you can be still and present, even to the storm, to the chaos. Because the curious paradox is, this is what Carl Rogers said, and I agree, as soon as I can accept myself the way I am, then I can change. And I think with culture, with anxiety, depression, financial issues, we avoid. It's too much. I can't understand it. I don't want to be with this. It's too painful. But actually, when we turn to face it and we say, okay, my finances really need sorting, or I really don't understand what it is to be Japanese and English. When I'm in Japan, I feel lost, just to name it. I feel shame. My art isn't getting anywhere. My heart's broken. Then we can begin to move forward. So I really endorse finding ways to be with the truth of what you are going through and trust it will be okay.
Damn. What is something that you love about being of mixed Japanese British heritage?
Oh, I love so much of it. I love being mixed because I love that it's my unique opportunity to belong to myself, and that I can pick and choose parts about Japan that I love. And I was there last year and I just felt so proud to have that lineage, to be connected to a long line of Japanese women who are just formidable and beautiful. And there is so much grace, and that grace is within me. And I think as much as I denied that and fought that, I'm really owning that now. So I have Japanese running through me, and it's beautiful. And that I get to offer that to my children. It was so gorgeous to take them to Japan. And they're so excited that they tell people, we're quarter Japanese. My gran is Japanese. We're beaming pride. And I love my English side. I love my nana who used to eat beans on toast, and I miss her. And my God, sorry. And all the parts that don't make sense, but they make sense because they're me and they belong to me. And I fought them for the longest time. And I think in accepting my mixedness and everything that has gone on, allowing it to sit together within my heart, it's kept me alive. And I want to give that to other people because it's the best. Yeah. Let's hold hands.
Sorry, hands are gladly.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you for holding the space for me to share. I knew I was going to cry.
It's always the grandma chat that breaks her.
Yeah, honestly.
After a slight pause to get some Kleenex and compose ourselves, we're back. Thank you, Denise, for your vulnerability. We really relate to all of it, and especially like being mixed as well. I really appreciate what you just said. So can you, for our lovely listeners and watchers, offer some resources if they are looking to explore therapy, maybe can't afford it, or are looking for someone who can understand them?
You know, the only organisation that I know who I endorse and that really, everybody's very qualified, but all are, so it's the Black Asian Therapist Network. All the therapists are from those backgrounds, exclusively work with those backgrounds. They're brilliant. BATAN, Black Asian Therapist Network. I really do endorse going to training institutions for therapy because, and you can find them all across London. So I do a little bit of research on the modality. I touched on that earlier on, but I'm humanistic, which means my philosophy is very much, it's not that I am, how could I be the expert on you? This might see that, why am I paying you then? but I'm an expert in holding space for you to come to understand yourself better, for you to come to answer your own questions, for you to empower yourself through your own struggle. It's a very big difference. In the psychodynamic approach, Freud, he didn't even face his patients at the beginning. They'd be on the couch and so they'd be facing him and he'd be turning away, analysing. So listening to them and using his own analysis. Freud is the godfather of psychotherapy. I respect Freud. But I don't believe in, especially, can you imagine, from a white man analysing me? No. Just no. Why is your analysis, because you've studied some books, have more power over my experience as a mixed woman? That in itself, just very simply, is ridiculous. Maybe some concepts for sure.
Bowlby.
Right. But so in the humanistic realm, it's very much about being present to what the client is bringing and listening so acutely and checking in all the time. And there are lots of different threads within each realm. So you have the psychodynamic realm, and of course the psychodynamic realm has so much value, and psychoanalysis has so much value, and understanding attachment style has so much value. And I love Jung. Jung is my guy, but this is if you're looking for a therapist, first of all, you have to understand about the philosophy of the therapist, actually. I really think before then looking for a therapist that's mixed or of colour. So the Freudian approach, psychodynamic, then the humanistic approach is the way in which I work, which is more counselling based, less analysis based, and being with somebody in the space, listening. And then you've got the solution focused realm, which is what the NHS uses the most. And yes, you can go for free therapy on NHS, but sadly, currently the waiting list is like a year and a half for some people.
And it's CBT.
So then people wait, they get to it. See, you can get 6 sessions. I trained in the NHS, maybe 12. What was really hard for me was to establish a connection with somebody, because they do bring in counsellors, not just TBT therapists, but 6 sessions. Sometimes it takes 6 to establish therapeutic trust, and then you have to say goodbye. And they're not allowed to take your details. So even I wasn't running private practice, then you have to say goodbye. So again, if somebody's opened everything up, and then you've got to, that for me is very risky.
It's so risky.
And then NHS know this, and I'm so grateful for the NHS, my God. And we've got such good mental health services in this country, really do, compared to others. I'm not being negative, but if you have trauma or complex problems and you go for CBT or 6 sessions of counselling, it's risky. So anyway, beyond that, then the Black Asian Therapist Network are fantastic if you are looking for a therapist of colour. In the music industries, you've got Help Musicians UK. So if you're an artist, so if you're a musician or working in the music industry, Help Musicians UK and the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine. I'll give you all this details. They're amazing. I'm on their directory. All their therapists are very qualified, and we all have a background in the arts. So we kind of understand the context of the arts. They're brilliant. Music support work with addiction for musicians. I also think that Mind Charity are fantastic. They also offer some free sessions or low cost. And they're just a really brilliant organisation to seek out for counselling. And beyond that, go to training institutions. So once you've found your modality, if you type up training institution, humanistic therapy, you can go there, you can contact them and say, do you have a counselling service where your students are seeing the public? And then if they are, at that point, you've probably had 4 or 5 years of training until you can, or 4 years, and making your hours. So you're hungry to work with the public. I was so keen. I was a student, but I knew a lot at that point. And you can be in therapy for 6 months, maybe, whilst that therapist is accumulating their hours, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Like, therapy really changed my life, and it was expensive. And as an Asian person, I was just like, could save this. I could, I don't know.
Is this nonsense? Is this actually, yeah.
But it was, yeah.
I would say the same. I feel like therapy was nothing like I thought it was going to be. I think people have a very binary idea of it. It's like you go in and you gut yourself like a fish and you come out healed. And while that's kind of true, it's someone saying, how do you feel today? It's also like a completely different journey, I guess, for everyone. And what that looks like is so, I can't even begin to describe it. It's just, you're just pinging. And it really is confronting, because some days you want to close up like a clam and be like, I'm good, you? And be a bit more banterous and defensive. And it's so hard to like always put yourself in the space. Like it like requires self-work to even get to the point of being like, I'm going to do it today.
And I'm going to speak it out loud.
Because it's hard.
And you don't always need to be in a session and pouring in pain. I think sometimes my clients go, I had this yesterday. I'm feeling great. I don't really know what to bring. I was thinking, feeling really happy. I said, great. Let's process that.
Oh, love.
Because then you're encounter. It's not even therapy. It's like a gym for the mind. I like that analogy. It's very simplistic, but actually I like it because it's so much more than that too. But if you were just doing it for kind of maintenance, for your spirit and your soul, and you're constantly in inquiry with self in a way that is present, it's very important for all your relationships, and because you'll be there more.
Yeah, you'll be present.
Question. Yeah. Do you think that people in interracial relationships should do counselling before having children or getting married or just building a life together?
I mean, I think everyone can benefit from therapy, and all couples can too. But yeah, the point of the interracial thing is really interesting. Yes, you know, I've got friends right now who are about to have a baby, and one is from a very devout Muslim background, and, you know, he's white and has become Muslim. But I think that there's just conversations about rules around when baby comes, for example, that belong to the Muslim culture that he has to adapt to, or they had to talk about him adapting to. And it's huge when there's a culture clash in parenting, for sure. So yeah, I definitely think perhaps before someone has children, you need to figure out what the impact of your culture is going to be in your parenting styles. That would be wise. And yes, just coexisting with anybody and how your culture impacts you. But often, as we shared earlier, you know, in my experience, I wouldn't have even said any Japanese was coming through. And that's quite sad. I wouldn't have even thought to bring that into the conversation. But so obviously, since becoming a mum, I live next door to my mum, and she's a massive part of my children's life. Her parenting and how she influenced me as a Japanese woman is there and is present and has come through in conversation with my husband when he's like, you're doing this like your mum. You know, so I think just for anybody, it's worth using a counselling space to figure out how to be in relationship with each other, for sure. You know, that's really the bottom line, because I think there are overt parts in culture that can be brought in and worked through, and some that are even realised and that you realise along the way.
Beautiful, and a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Denise, for this healing, beautiful, unvulnerable. Yeah. I was going to say session, but it's not, but it feels like that.
Funny that.
Before we close the episode, please can you share with us, if you were to write a love letter to Diaspora, what would it say?
Really what I said before, just fall in love with yourself, the uniqueness of you and all your parts. They're not separate. They belong together, belong to yourself.
Denise, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for holding this space and doing what you do.
Thank you. We would like to hold space for you now. And please, down this camera, just share where people can find you, what projects you've got on, how we can support, and your music as well, and all the things.
I'm currently the artist's therapist on Instagram. I started a TikTok page. It's all quite new, so please follow. My name might change. I'm writing a book. I'm trying to write a book about the artist being an important part of everybody. So that's in the making. But I've made an album, and it's called, I made it with my dad. And it's a mixture of kind of dub, folk, reggae, kind of trip hop. It's called This Road, and you can listen to it on Spotify. I've got beautiful vinyls in my house. The vinyls are gorgeous, and CDs, though nobody really listens to CDs. And my website is Denise Devenish Counselling. I run private practice. So get in contact. And thank you.
Thank you so much to our Eastern Honeys gang for holding space with us every episode. Honestly, this podcast, the show, it's a journey for Mel and I, it's a journey for the guests, it's a journey for a crew every single damn day. So we really honestly, it's such a gift to be sitting in this space with everybody. And we hope you really feel that through the lens somehow. So do subscribe and share. Send this to your dad, send it to your mum, share it to a friend. And we shall see you on the next episode. Toodles. Maraming salamat.